wording at the time when I signed it. It was a generalisation of the situation, and yes, I guess, Your Honour, I didn't take seriously the wording of it at that time.
Well, here you were reporting on a serious allegation, but you say you didn't take the reporting or the wording seriously at the time.
I don't really know how to answer that, Your Honour. It's what you're saying is probably true, yes.
How would you feel if you'd made the complaint and the person who was reporting on the outcome didn't take seriously the wording in the letter that they were signing?
I can see the point that you're making, sir, yes.
And tell me this, you told us earlier that apart from the touching of the breast allegation, BCB made other allegations to you, correct?
Yes, I believe so, yes.
There's no reference to those allegations at all in this letter, are there?
No.
Why not?
I can't answer that, I'm sorry. Not that I'm refusing to, it's just that I can't think of reasons why they're not in there.
Then you record there, we recommended to him that he be stepped down as an elder, and he agreed to this. Now, that seems to suggest that you offered him the opportunity to step down, and he did, rather than you removed him. Now, is there a distinction to be had? How are we to understand that?
No, it's just an unfortunate choice of words there.
So he was definitely deleted or removed?
Removed, yes.
And then you say in the letter, we feel no further action or restrictions need apply. Why was that? Did you consider other actions or restrictions which might be imposed?
In the case of a judicial committee, restrictions against commenting and having parts on meetings and things are what we refer to as restrictions. At this time, we didn't believe that Bill Neal need to have those restrictions put upon him.
Well, what about not having church meetings, Bible studies in his home? That strikes as an appropriate or potentially appropriate restriction which might offer some safety.
I agree, yes. I don't think that action was taken at the time.
Well, it wasn't taken. The point is, okay. Did you consider it?
I can't recall considering it, no.
And then if we look at the last paragraph of the letter on the second page, or second last actually, towards the end, it says, also, brothers, I would recommend that once this has died down and it appears that Brother Neal again has the freedom of speech, that he be recommended as an elder again so that he can be of help in the congregation, as he has done in the past. By this dying down, you mean once the controversy has abated, I take it?
It would take a long time, many years, in fact, for that to have died down. That's again, it's an unfortunate wording. In hindsight, we would have worded that much differently to what it is there. Matters of this nature take many years for, if ever, to die down completely.
Well, that was really the focus of your concern there about in taking action against Mr. Neal was about his reputation. Is that right?
Not at all, no.
Well, his reputation in the congregation, his freedom of speech.
is, sorry, what was the questioning again?
Well, that was at the centre of your concern in deciding to remove him as an elder, was his reputation in the congregation.
Not so much his reputation, but how to word it?
Well, it suggests your concern is with his efficacy as an elder.
Yeah,
Is that right?
that's right.
I used to celebrate birthdays up until 5 years old. No birthdays, no Christmas. No.
I'll convey an apology to Your Honour, Commissioner. Technology. See, your concern as an elder there, as I understand it from this letter, was about the proper functioning of your organisation. Is that right?
Yes,
It wasn't about the protection of children in your congregation.
probably not.
It wasn't about what support you could offer to BCB.
That must have had some bearing on it, but yeah, it was more with his qualifications to teach.
Now, you say in your statement that you understand that Bill Neal was later reappointed as an elder in a different congregation. Is that right?
Yes,
And as I understand it, you had nothing to do with that.
that's true.
And under the existing practices, should you not have been consulted about that, having been the elder involved in his removal?
I was surprised at the time, yes.
But then if we look at tab 74 of that bundle, this is now a letter from you earlier this year. It'll come up in a moment. You'll see it's to the service desk on the 6th of January 2015, and what you describe as a brief summary of events leading to the deletion of Brother Neal from serving as an elder in the Narrogin WA congregation around 1993, while I was serving there. How did this letter come about?
Beg pardon?
How did this letter come about? What brought you to write this letter in 2015 to the branch?
Someone from the branch contacted me and asked me what my recollections were, and would I please put them in a letter and send it to them.
Was it explained to you why that information was being sought?
I think mention was made about the Royal Commission, but I thought it was one of the situations that was being looked at, and then it might proceed to the Royal Commission.
And by this time, of course, Bill Neal was deceased,
Yes,
and you knew that.
yes, I attended his funeral.
And that was, as I understand it, about 11 years ago. Would that be right?
Quite possibly. I don't know exactly the time, but yeah, that sounds about right, yeah.
A goodly number of years ago.
Yep.
Now, this correspondence is addressed to the service desk. I take it was someone from the service desk that contacted you in the way in which you've mentioned.
Yes.
In your understanding, what's the distinction between when you would correspond with the service desk or the legal department?
it may have been a member of the legal department that contacted me, but the letter was addressed to the service department.
Well,
Service desk, yeah.
moving away from this particular letter, generally when, as an elder, you're corresponding with the branch,
We send stuff to the service
it
desk.
seems to me that there's some correspondences with the service desk and some is with the legal department, and I'm trying to understand where the
Okay.
distinction arises. So I'm asking you, what is your understanding as to when you would communicate with the service desk as opposed to when you would communicate with the legal department?
If the legal department had said, send it to us at the legal department, that's how the letter would have been addressed. In this case, they asked us to send it to the service department.
But generally,
Service desk.
moving away from this letter, generally in your work as an elder, when would you contact the service desk as opposed to the legal department and vice versa?
The legal department I would contact in cases pertaining to legal matters. Our information now is if a case of child abuse was raised, we would contact the legal desk straight away. But normally anything that goes through the service desk, and then they assign it to the appropriate department from there.
Just to understand you, so you would contact the service desk but be expected to be passed on to the legal department. Is that what you say?
They would decide if that's where it needed to go, yeah. But as I said about contacting the legal department in matters pertaining to legal cases and things like that, if we needed direction in a hurry, that's who we'd contact.
And generally with regard to direction as to handle investigations and complaints, would that come from the service desk?
Yes.
Now you say in that letter in the fourth paragraph, the one beginning when BCB raised the allegation against Brother Bill concerning being touched inappropriately, I viewed it very seriously. I listened to both to try and ascertain the facts. Sadly, it became a matter of her word against his. There were no other witnesses. And then you say BCB was an attractive young sister and often got around the house in her nightwear, as was the custom of the other children. Now, what do you consider the relevance of that observation?
That was one comment that Bill had made to me, that she was wearing her nightwear at the time.
Well, it suggests that you thought that might have somehow lessened Bill Neal's culpability.
Not at all. No. In fact, it should have raised stronger warning bells than it did at the time, because it all pointed to the fact that he obviously had noticed it and was affected by that.
Because you accept, of course, that a child can't validly consent to being sexually abused. You accept that, of course.
Yes.
And can never be blamed for it.
Yes.
Because that's in the Church's own teachings, isn't it? That children can't seduce and should not be blamed.
Mm.
Yes. Those are my questions.
Yes, does anyone else have any questions?
Yes, thank you, Raju. Just in relation to the letter that...
Just identify
Oh, I
yourself
beg your
again,
pardon,
if you
sorry. My name is Gallagher and I represent BCB.
Okay.
Just in relation to the letter that Council Assisting was just referring to, behind tab 74, you note in that letter, don't you? Is that in front of you there?
Yep.
Not only the comment, the part of the letter that was just referred to by Council Assisting, but you note also, don't you, that Bill would kiss her goodnight as he did with his daughters. Do you see that there?
Yes.
That was very much lessening his, Mr. Neal's conduct, wasn't it? Do you understand what I mean by that? I'm sorry, you know the allegation to have been, don't you, that he inserted his tongue into her mouth when he kissed her goodnight.
Bill never admitted to that. The way that he put it across was that he would say goodnight to all of the girls before they went to bed.
So what about the accusation from the person who was abused? The accusation was, wasn't it, that the tongue was inserted into her mouth?
I believe so, yes. I can't recall that being said at the time, but it's quite possible that it was.
You took no notes of your initial discussion with BCB and BCC?
No.
Is that so? Your recollection was that they came to your home, that is BCB and BCC, is that right?
That's what I recalled, yes.
You understand that BCB's recollection is that you approached her after being told of an allegation from another member of the faith, correct?
That may be so. I don't recall that.
And certainly if somebody has been told of an allegation of wrongdoing, the faith requires them to come forward and tell an elder. Is that right?
Sorry, I don't understand that question.
If somebody's told of wrongdoing,
Yeah.
the Jehovah's Witness faith requires that person to inform an elder. Isn't that so?
They give the... yes. Short answer, yes.
And that's how you came, do you recall, that's how you came upon the information that there was an allegation of wrongdoing from Bill Neal, not from BCB, but from another source?
No, I don't recall that.
In questions asked of counsel assisting, you indicate that just as to taking Mr. Neal to BCB's home, that your evidence was, is this correct, that you did not explain what the process was that was underway at that time? Is that correct?
That's possible.
Well, did you or did you not explain to her what was going on?
In the information here, it's put across that I went to see them with Bill on my own. I don't recall that happening. I thought I only went to see them with Doug Jackson, and I don't recall it being in their home. Normally those sort of events take place at the Kingdom Hall, which...
Yeah. You were 28 at the time, weren't you? Does that accord with
No, I
your
was about
recollection?
32.
32.
By 1992, yes.
But so still quite a young man.
That's right.
And how old was Bill Neal at the time? Do you know?
I would like to hazard a guess.
Certainly he was more senior than you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
He was a presiding overseer, wasn't
Yes.
he? So that certainly if BCB's recollection is accurate that you attended with Bill Neal, it would have been a situation where he would have been the most senior person in the room. Do you agree with that proposition?
Certainly would have been the oldest, yes.
Sorry?
He would have been the oldest and the most experienced from the church, yes.
Yes. And the more senior member of the church in the room. And you know, don't you, that that BCB and BCC were both quite devout at that time?
Yes.
In the sense that it would have been obvious to you that you were, as an elder, trusted by them?
Yep.
And that they were handing themselves over to your guidance. Do you agree with that proposition?
Yes.
So that, looking back on it now, can you see that taking the abuser to somebody's home is totally inappropriate?
Yes.
You is it the case, sir, that the thrust of inquiry in relation to somebody being involved in wrongdoing is to protect the congregation?
Yes.
So that in the sense, and excuse me a moment, if we could go to tab 84 and reference 0309. Which is at page 29, the second column. If I could refer you to the second column at about point 7 down the page, the sentence commencing, "It is not his status as an authority figure." Can you see that there? In the second column.
No, not yet.
So I understand it to be, I'm sorry, Your Honour, I hope I haven't got the wrong tab. Tab 84. Excuse me a moment. Oh, I beg your pardon. Maybe I could, it's the "let us abhor what is wicked." Your Honour, I beg your pardon. So certainly 85, I think, Councillors. Tab 85, thank you. Page 29, or in the top right-hand column, 0309, top right-hand of the page. If you could go to the second column, about point 7 down that, you see the sentence commencing, "It is not his status as an authority figure." Can you see that, sir?
Not yet. Oh, yes. Yeah.
It is not his status as an authority figure that should be of concern, but rather the unblemished purity of the congregation.
Yes.
And that was the purpose of your inquiry, wasn't it? To protect the congregation from
Yeah.
Bill Neal.
Yeah.
Not to protect BCB.
Well, her included in the congregation. She was part of the congregation.
As a victim
Yes.
of abuse, she wasn't protected, but as a member of the congregation, you were seeking to protect her. Is that right?
As well, yes.
You indicate that you did not speak harshly to BCB when you were being asked questions by a counsel assisting you. He put to you that you should treat victims with they should be treated with kindness. You agreed with that and indicated that you didn't speak harshly with her. Do you agree, though, that when a young woman has made allegations of sexual impropriety against an elder, that taking that elder to her is harsh treatment of her?
I can understand how she would view it that way, yes. And
Well, do you?
on the surface, if I try to put myself in her position, yes, I'd feel exactly the same.
Certainly, it's the case now, isn't it, that I'll withdraw that. Making this inquiry and going to her and having her face her abuser, or that is the accused face his accuser, was all about disciplining Bill Neal, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And certainly it's the case now that if there is a police inquiry on foot in regards to a matter, that disciplinary proceedings run parallel with that. Do you agree with that?
I don't have any experience with that at this time, so...
In the sense that if there is a police inquiry on foot, certainly members of the church and the congregation are told not to interfere with the police inquiry. Is that right?
I would think that would be reasonable, yes. I don't remember instructions in that way, but it does make sense, yes.
If you were to be confronted with this situation today, what would you do differently to what you did then?
First thing would be to contact the branch for direction, look up any of the relevant information that we've got, the latest information, and proceed following their direction.
Before contacting the branch, what would you do in relation to what you knew of the complaint?
Try and establish the facts. Or
How
the
would you do
information.
that?
Oftentimes, if someone comes to us, we hear the information just on a one-on-one, but I think the indications are that it's better to have two elders there so that we can present that to the branch with the two of us, like on a conference call or something.
Specifically in relation to BCB's situation, what would you do differently today? Or would you conduct yourself in exactly the same way as you did?
No, I wouldn't do the same.
What would you do differently?
Being the only other elder there, and if the circuit overseer wasn't due to visit like he was in that case, I would have called an elder from another congregation and we would have heard her allegations together, and then we would approach the branch for direction.
Would you have a female, a sister involved in relation to talking with the person who was making complaint about sexual impropriety?
That would be up to the person making the accusations, I would think. If she wanted to have someone there as a support, I think that would be the case.
Mr. Hawley, I understand how the church is organised, but what the process means is that the investigation, take a case such as this one, of a woman's allegations is made entirely by men. Correct?
I'm sorry, the...
The investigation within the church is conducted entirely by men.
That's correct, yes.
You think that's appropriate when the allegation comes from a woman and maybe a young woman?
That's the procedure that we have in place.
I know, but I'm asking you a different question.
Well, that sort of comes into my personal feelings. I think I would still have to be bound by what the branch directs me to do.
Secondly, as here, you as an elder were being asked to investigate allegations of a person who you had worked with as an elder.
Yes.
Now, to an outsider, that doesn't seem like a fair process. Do you understand why that is?
Yes, and that's why we would have another elder there. In this case, the circuit overseer visited. He didn't know Bill as well as I did, so he tends to be a little bit more impersonal in the...
Well, he might, but you're still there.
Yeah.
And you know this elder well and have worked with him.
Yes, and I remember at the time I was very shocked at the treatment or the allegations that were made against him. So to me, he had betrayed me and as much as the congregation, obviously not as much as the person that had the victim in this case, but to me it went against everything that we'd been taught and trained as elders. Bill was a man that I'd known for about 16 years. growing up as a teenager in the congregation, looking to him and respecting him. Then being appointed as an elder myself, being mentored by him in the way that we should treat the flock with tenderness and care, and we're taught to be a hiding place, a refuge, somewhere that they can go and seek help and to really care for their spiritual needs. And now this situation, Bill had completely betrayed all of those things. So it wasn't like I was looking at things from a siding with him. I was sticking with the teachings that I'd been trained in, and looking at it impartially and trying to look at it that way.
You ultimately reported that his conduct was the result of accidental touching, didn't you?
That was his.
Well, that's what
his
you
description.
That's what you reported.
Okay.
That's what you found.
Right.
Agreed?
That's all that he admitted to.
Yes, and that's what your finding was. Now, again, to an outsider, could you see that an outsider may think that when someone who you know well is being investigated by you, that may not be a fair process?
I can understand how they would see that, yes.
Do you think that's a process which the church should change?
I don't know how to comment on that. They may have made changes in that process, not according to the book that we have, but where it says that we contact the branch, then the direction that they give in that instance may give us further bearing on that.
Yes.
Thank you. I won't keep you much longer, Mr. Hawley, but have you come to know about the full extent of BCB's allegation against Bill Neal?
No. I only know what was dealt with at the time.
So you don't know that she, for about 3 or 4 years, was subject to indecent assaults, effectively, where she was tongue-kissed by this elder?
No, I'm not aware of that.
That she was on one occasion forced to sit on the bathroom floor, spread her legs and have his finger inserted into her vagina.
No, I'm not aware of that.
So the reason I highlight that is that certainly it's not the sort of thing that... I'll withdraw that. Does that come as a shock to you that
Absolutely.
that she actually endured that? Or experienced that at the hands of Bill Neal?
Yes, it's a shock, yes.
And do you think the fact that it's only coming to light now has something to do with the process that you engaged in when she made initial complaint?
I feel very saddened if that is the case.
It's understandable that it would be. Do you agree with that, in the sense that she's confronted with her abuser and somebody who she would know was close to her abuser, which you've just given that evidence? It's understandable that she wouldn't make full disclosure. That's correct, isn't it?
I can see what you're saying, yes.
She needs a more nurturing and supportive environment in which to make full disclosure, doesn't she?
It would appear that way, yes, from what you're saying.
And what is the church going to do about that? Do you have any thoughts on that going into the future?
I don't have any comments on how they arrive at the decisions that they make. I just follow the procedures that they have there in place. At the time, we did the best that we could with the information that we had. Now, handling the situation again might be completely different.
Thank you. You're on another.
Does Does anyone else have any questions?
No, Your Honour.
No, Your Honour.
Mr Stewart?
Nothing further, Your Honour.
Yes, thank you, Mr Hawley. You're excused.
The next witness is Mr. Doug Jackson.
Mr Jackson, it's necessary for you to be sworn. Will you take an oath on the Bible or an affirmation?
Oh. Affirmation.
Affirmation.
On the Bible? Yeah.
Well, which one? It's your choice. Which one would you do?
Bible?
The Bible.
Yeah.
Very well. You take that in your hand and repeat after me. I do swear by Almighty God
I do swear by Almighty God
that the evidence I shall give in this Royal Commission
the evidence I'll give in this Royal Commission
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Take a seat, please.
Will you state your full names, Mr. Jackson?
Douglas James Jackson.
And Mr. Jackson, do you have before you a copy of your statement dated 10 July 2015?
I do.
Are there any amendments or corrections you'd like to make to the statement?
I don't think so.
Do you confirm the statement as being true and correct?
I do.
I tender the statement, John.
It'll be Exhibit 29-4.
Mr. Jackson, you were baptized as a Jehovah's Witness in 1963, is that right?
Correct.
And you were appointed as an elder in the Swan Hill congregation in Victoria in 1971.
Correct.
And having been a witness for only 4 years, is that right?
4 years.
You had been
Oh,
when you were first appointed an elder.
no, 1963 I was baptised, 71 an elder.
Yes, so in other words, only 4 years from being baptized to being an elder. I beg your pardon. My arithmetic there, I apologize entirely. You subsequently served as an elder in other congregations in Victoria, South Australia and Western Australia, is that right?
Yes.
And in 1990 you were appointed by the Australia branch to serve as a circuit overseer.
Correct.
What does that entail, Mr. Jackson?
I would visit 20 congregations in a circuit, around 20, could be less, could be more. And it involved having at that time, which is not the case now, 3 meetings, Tuesday, Thursday, and then one on Sunday with the congregation, and also a meeting that was held with the elders and ministerial servants with an outline from the governing body. And we'd share in the ministry as well during that particular week with various ones in the congregation.
And how many congregations would you typically have within your responsibility?
Around 20, but it could be more, could be less, just depends. And that circuit I can't remember now.
And you were the circuit overseer responsible for the Narrogin congregation from 1990 to the end of 1992, is that right?
I don't think it was the end, but it was sometime in 1992 that I changed, but I'm not too sure.
But it's in that period that you had an involvement in the allegations by BCB against Bill Neal, is that right?
Correct.
So it was in that capacity as circuit overseer responsible for, amongst others, the Narrogin congregation.
Correct.
And to your recollection, how big was the Narrogin congregation?
Oh, I'm not too sure, around 80.
And you then served as circuit overseer until 1998, is that right?
That's correct.
And
Not on that circuit though.
Yes, and then as district overseer until 2014.
Correct.
And what is the role of a district overseer?
District overseer is mainly looking after what we used to call circuit assemblies on weekends, which were 2 days, and they took up the majority of our time, plus we'd share in the ministry with the circuit overseer as well. Basically, it was giving talks at these circuit assemblies.
And do you hold any position of responsibility in the church currently?
Only serving as an elder.
In which congregation is that?
Windsor Gardens in South Australia.
Now, in your statement, paragraph 2.2, we can call that up. You say that from the 1990s, I recall that matters of child sexual abuse began to be dealt with as a special category, and elders were directed to report any such complaints or allegations immediately to the branch office and to follow their direction in regard to reporting the matter to the authorities. Do you know what brought about that change?
I don't know for sure. I would say it was because of the situation of child abuse starting to be increased and these matters being brought to the fore.
And was it that the particular issue was about getting direction with regard to reporting the matters to the authorities, or was it handling it more generally?
At that time, there was information relating to reporting the matter to the authorities, but that was brought about later on in the 90s and into the 2000s.
And in paragraph 4.1 of your statement,
I don't seem to have that. Oh, sorry.
do you have that? It should also be on the screen in front of you.
Oh, great.
You say that BCB's case is the only case involving child sexual abuse in which I've ever been involved. The records available to the Royal Commission suggest that there has been another case. You're going to be shown a name. I'm not wanting you to say the name out aloud because I'd rather keep it confidential, but it's to see whether that perhaps jogs your memory as to another case that you were involved in.
No, sorry.
Doesn't jog your memory? So as far as you can remember sitting there now, there was just this one case of child sexual abuse in your years
Yes.
that you had to deal with.
Yeah.
You were the circuit overseer, and in that capacity you were told by Max Hawley about the allegations against Bill Neal, is that right?
Correct.
And Hawley and Neal were the two elders of that congregation at that time, the only two elders, is that right?
As far as I can remember, yeah, I think that was the case, yes.
Yes, because Frank Shaylor had retired and moved back to Perth, as evidence we've heard from Mr. Hawley.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, what do you recall Mr. Hawley telling you?
Well, as far as I know, is that he approached me and mentioned to me regarding the allegations that have been made, and that and then we decided that we're going to investigate it more.
And what were the allegations?
Well, I was under the impression that it was just that Bill Neal had been watching BCB in the shower. And also, too, I think it was mentioning the touching of the breast once.
So that's what the most you can remember of what Max Hawley told you when he informed you about this matter?
I think that was the case, yes.
And At the stage that he informed you, what did he tell you that he had done about it up until then?
I would say that he would have investigated, but I can't remember exactly what he said.
Did he tell you whether he had met with BCB and or with Mr. Neil?
I would say that he would have met with both, yes, but I can't remember if he told me that.
And then, as I understand it, you and he resolved to investigate the matter together, is that right?
Correct.
And what did you do in order to investigate it?
Well, we had meetings with BCB and with Mr. Neil, and also others knew about it, and we also got some information from them as well within the congregation. Can't remember how many, but I know that possibly there was a few others as well.
And do you remember what information they were able to give you?
I cannot remember that, no, just the allegations that had been made regarding the watching of the shower. I don't know if it dealt with the touching of the breast or any other activity at all by him.
Because there was no one else who was a witness to these events, was there?
No.
And so you say you met with BCB and with Bill Neil. That was in a common meeting, is that right?
I can't recall whether it was, first of all, just in a common meeting or whether we met separately with BCB and also with Bill Neil. And then even collectively, I'm not sure.
And BCB says that she was unaware of the purpose of the meetings that she was attending, or what role those meetings were playing. Do you accept that?
No, I don't, because we would have told her why we were meeting because of her concern of what was happening.
Well, I'll come back to the question of what you would have told her, but dealing first with the question of what you actually remember. Do you remember anything that you did tell her? Or was it too long ago?
No, Jill, I'm sorry.
So then reverting to the less safe ground, as it were, what do you say you would have told her?
How do you mean? What would I say?
Well, you started saying earlier, I would have told her about something about what the meeting was about. Now, I'm
just said...
You and I must try not to speak at the same time,
Sorry.
Mr. Jackson. So what is it that you think you would have told her in explaining what the meeting or meetings were about?
Well, about the allegations that she had made against Bill Neil.
That you were investigating them?
Yeah.
Yes. And more than that?
Possibly we would have asked her whether these were true, the watching of the shower and the touching of the breast as well. That would be, I'd say that's what I would have said the meeting was about.
Now, you'd appreciate that in what you were doing was part of a process which is set out in the church's documents and protocols, is that right?
You're correct, yes.
And you and Mr. Hawley were doing an investigation to see whether there was sufficient evidence to establish these allegations as true, which would, had they been established, would have led to a judicial committee, is that right?
Yes, that's true.
And you were experienced in those matters, those procedural matters?
Well, it was the first situation that I've ever had where I was dealing with that type of thing.
Well, specifically child sexual abuse.
Yeah.
But you'd had other investigations in relation to other serious allegations of one form or another, I take it?
Yes. Yes. But nothing like that.
Perhaps adultery?
Yes.
Or lying?
Yeah, not lying, but adultery, yes. Yeah.
And various other. So you were familiar with the procedure you were embarking on?
Yeah.
And you understand that BCB would not have been familiar with that procedure?
Oh, correct.
So she would have these two men, you and Mr. Hawley, asking her questions, but not knowing how that fitted into an overall procedure.
That's correct, although in the publications with situations like that or adultery lying, there is mention, even back then in the 90s, of the procedures. So the publications did have a bit of information regarding what would happen.
Well, the publication you're referring to is the publication which is for elders, the Elders Handbook, isn't it?
I know there's information in the Watchtowers and the Awake relating to that. Even with child abuse, there's information there.
Well, specifically, I'm addressing the procedures to be followed.
Oh, right, sorry.
Because what BCB says is she didn't know what these meetings were about or how they fitted into any overall procedure. And you would accept that she wouldn't know that.
Well, as far as I can recall, maybe she didn't. But I thought we would have explained it to her.
Well, all you've said you would have explained is that you're investigating her allegations and asking
Yes.
whether they're true.
Yes.
And she'd be left in the relative dark as to how that fitted into whether there might then be a judicial committee, what might happen thereafter, what
Yes.
evidence would be sufficient, what evidence would not be sufficient. Do you agree?
Yes, correct.
And you see that would leave her in a position of vulnerability and perhaps confusion.
Yes, I do now, yes.
And so you would accept that in investigative procedures such as this, an important component to support someone who's making allegations of abuse is to fully appraise them of the procedure and what's happening so they feel comfortable in it.
Yes, and I think that's what we've been trained to do more so in these later years.
Now, I withdraw that. So, Mr. Jackson, back to the particular meetings that you had. I understand you to say you're not sure whether there was a meeting that had BCB and Mr. Neil in it at the same time. Or do you accept that there was such a meeting?
I cannot recall it, but I'd say yes, there was.
Yes, but that would be the normal procedure at
Yes,
that time,
yes.
wouldn't it?
Yes.
And would that be the normal procedure even today? In other words, that someone who is making serious allegations against someone must be prepared to make them in their presence?
Well, now it's a matter of, first of all, hearing both sides separately and then maybe trying to get them together to see if it's correct or not.
Well, even hearing them separately, if you then decided as part of that preliminary investigation that there was sufficient evidence and to convene a judicial committee, you would then have to put them together, is that right? In other words, you'd have to, the witnesses, including the abused, would have to speak in the presence of the accused.
Well, yes, but not necessarily always the case. It could be that, there was convincing evidence from others as well. Yes, you put them under pressure if you put them both together.
Yes, well, that's my point. So you say if there were two other witnesses of the incident, not the person who's abused, and the perpetrator hasn't admitted or confessed, you've got two other witnesses. In that situation, you may not have to have the person who suffered the abuse giving evidence in the presence of the accused, is that right? But where there isn't that situation, where there aren't two independent witnesses, then she would have to. She would have to give evidence in the presence of the accused.
Yes, I just can't remember whether we did or whether we didn't under those circumstances.
Well, you didn't, to be fair, and what you were doing, you hadn't reached judicial committee stage and you never did, is that right? But talking generally now, even the present position is that if a judicial committee is formed, leaving aside the situation where one has at least two other independent witnesses, the victim of the abuse would have to bear witness or give evidence in the face of the accused. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
And that's set out in the Shepherd the Flock of God
Yes.
handbook, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you yourself, I think, accepted a moment ago that puts a lot of strain and pressure on the person who suffered, doesn't it?
Yes, it does, and that's where even now we're encouraged if there's some type of support. For example, in child abuse, maybe the parents, the husband or wife, or other supports, maybe a close friend. That just depends on the circumstances.
Mr. Jackson, do you have any knowledge of the developments in the investigation and trial of sexual assault matters in the ordinary courts?
No, sorry, I don't, Your Honour.
You don't know anything about the research which has led to changes in process so that victims don't have to face the alleged abuser in the course of the trial?
I don't, but I'd say that's why our organisation has changed, where it's not necessarily doing that anymore, and that we do have a support along with us if required.
It's not a question of support, it's a question of the traumatic circumstance for a victim in having
Yes.
to confront
Yes.
their alleged abuser. You understand?
Yes.
You say that that's now understood by your church?
I'd say it would be, yes.
When you say it would be, can you point to anything that confirms that it is understood?
Well, offhand, no, I can't, sorry. But I'd say the way that now we are dealing with matters, that we must be taking that into consideration.
Perhaps you can explain it to me, how you're dealing with matters that suggest
Well,
taking that into consideration.
In a situation of child abuse, then one would have some type of support there, maybe from, not maybe, but from those sources, either friend, parents, husband, wives, and maybe we don't, because I haven't been involved with it, maybe we don't directly have that one-on-one where we used to many times. If it was just one-on-one basis of one accusation against the other.
I'm not sure I'm understanding, but the civil courts have come to understand that the trauma that can be involved for a victim in having to face-to-face contact with the alleged abuser can be a very traumatic experience.
Yes.
Does your church understand that?
I would say yes, they do now, yeah.
How would it be accommodated then if the investigation is in relation to an allegation by a woman that she was abused by a man in the church?
Well, first of all, we would, maybe two would listen to her and get some comments from her about the allegation, and then we would see the person separately and talk to that individual.
And then what would you do after that?
Well, we'd contact the branch if we felt there was those allegations were correct and were truthful, and follow the procedures. So they're talking to the legal side of the branch, and then take the procedure or take the information from them that they would give us.
When you say you'd take those steps if you thought the allegation was truthful, if you just have an interview with a female complainant who says she's the victim, and then follow that with an interview with the alleged abuser, would that be sufficient for you to be able to determine that the allegation was truthful?
Yes, it would.
So you wouldn't need a second witness?
Not necessarily under those circumstances like that.
So is that a significant change from some years ago?
Very significant, yes.
And is that change relevant to sexual assault and other types of misconduct, or only sexual assault?
Well, offhand, I'm not too sure just how to answer that because I'm not aware of it, and I haven't been involved in anything lately. And I'm just not sure the material really has any, that we have, has anything relevant to that.
Yes, Mr. Stewart.
As your honour pleases. Mr. Jackson, you familiar with the manual or guide, Shepherd the Flock of God? Can we have tab 120 on the screen? And particularly at ringtail 90, that's otherwise page 89. Now this has applied since 2010, is that right?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson? And it's essentially a guide to elders, is that right?
Yes, it is.
Yes. And as to how to handle various situations. And you'll see this particular chapter, chapter 7, sets out the judicial hearing procedure. Do you see that?
Yes.
And then towards the foot of that page, you'll see further down, paragraph 2, the chairman should invite the accused to make a personal statement, and then it says, if the accused contends that he is innocent, the witnesses to the wrongdoing should be presented and their testimony be given in the presence of the accused. It is best that the witnesses give their testimony in person. And then there's...
I just haven't got that coming up. I've got 2, but not the rest.
Sorry, the next page, top of the next page. Now, there is the possibility then, it goes on, however, it may be that the witnesses live a great distance away or for some reason are not able to be physically present.
Yes.
If so, their testimony may be presented in the hearing of the accused by a secure phone call or perhaps submitted in writing and read to the accused.
Yes.
So are you saying that that exception might also be used to allow, in cases of child sexual abuse or sexual assault generally, the accuser to not be in the presence of the accused?
Well, here it's dealing with if the person lives a long distance away, but it can still, again, you're looking at the circumstances of the case and just the emotional condition of the person.
I think Mr. Stewart's suggesting to you that that's not to be found in this document.
Oh, I'm using the principle of that, though, just with your question that he's...
I think he's putting to you that the principle's not there either.
No. Okay, so maybe then it doesn't apply.
Well, he'd like to know what the true position
Well,
is.
this is the position here where it says, however, it may be that the witness live a great distance away or for some reason are not able to be physically present. So that's, I can't go beyond that. But sometimes situations arise where, you know, the emotional state of the person, we try to help them as much as we can.
This document proceeds, you'll see in the previous page, I think it is, the starting point for the judicial hearing procedure is to try to put the accused at ease. You see that?
Yep, I do, thank you.
And then in the first paragraph, those words are placed in heavy type. You see that?
Yes.
There's no mention there or anywhere of how you manage the victim, is there? Or the accuser.
No, but we have had watchtowers that relate to how we need to be very conscious of the person as well. And as regards to the way that they're going through what they're going through, the emotional state.
Well, you mean that the person who brings the allegation may be suffering considerable stress as well?
Oh, sorry, no, I thought you meant the person. Yeah.
My question is directed to there doesn't seem to be any acknowledgement that the person who brings the allegation may be suffering stress and need assistance. You see that?
Yes, yes. Yeah. Well, that's correct.
Can you help me with why that's not there?
No, I can't, sorry. No.
Mr. Stewart, I think we'll come back in the morning now.
Well, Your Honour, I just had one question about this page that's open, if I might, but I'm in your Honour's hands. That page 90, ringtail 91. Just on this question, you see paragraph 3 there. Just on this question of observers, I understood you to say that your understanding is the present position is that observers can be present to give moral support, but you'll see there this document says expressly observers should not be present for moral support. Do you see that?
Yes, yeah. Yes, but...
And this is the guide you have to follow, isn't it?
Yes, it is. But again, there have been information as regards to situations where, for example, parents, if they've been asked, they can go there through letters that we've had where they've been told that, we've been told that if, you know, it is a minor, parents can be there, husband or wife, if the guilty party wants to have them there, they can do that. But again, that does say that there. I'm just quoting other information that we've had, for example, letters later than 2010.
Well, we'll come back to that in the morning. We'll adjourn until 10 o'clock.